I think leaders have to listen, right? So if we're talking about giving someone a voice at the table, you actually have to actively listen to what's being said. I think at any given point, I may feel like I'm doing really good wearing one of those hats. And then sometimes I may feel like I totally suck at all of them, right? Anything that's purposeful will require great attention.
Welcome to Build Different, a leadership podcast where we all strive to learn how to build ourselves better through the different stories that we share to you weekly. My name is Jasper, your host for this episode. A world where inclusivity is a norm, diversity is celebrated, and equality is a given. And I say to myself, what a wonderful world. And this is the kind of world that our guest for today would like to achieve one step at a time with her brand of leadership. Our guest is no stranger to working with children and adults with intellectual and developmental diversities. With more than 35 years of experience in the disabled community, she knew that her volunteerism would take a more serious turn when her fourth child, Jelly Bean, was born with an extra chromosome. Advocating for individuals with Down syndrome, autism, and other intellectual disabilities has become her mission and given her life purpose. Best Buddies is a global nonprofit with a presence in 47 countries and has been running programs here in the Philippines since 2014. Through her website, Momma N Manila, I love this, her volunteer work, her motherhood, her lifestyle show, Kitchen 143, and as Executive Director of Best Buddies Philippines, she is confident that she is doing her small part in this world to further social inclusion for individuals of all abilities. Let us all welcome Michelle Aventajado. Woo! Thank you to our 5 million audiences right now.
Everyone who's tuning in.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me and
Always a
for
pleasure.
sharing our mission of inclusion with
Of
your
course,
listeners.
as you can see, guys,
You're
if you
wearing your
can see,
pin?
I'm a volunteer
You
of Best Buddies. So we
You
are in the best space right now to talk about it. This is Build Different. So perfect title also. And
Yes.
it's about celebrating it. But we start usually our tradition here in our podcast with a question. How would you describe yourself as a leader?
Yeah, so I think that's a question that I don't think I've described myself as a leader, right? I think there are so many things we identify as, and one of those things, I don't necessarily consider myself a leader, but I know in this sphere, in this community, I do have a responsibility. So I think I'm very collaborative in my leadership. And I think that has a lot to do with knowing that I don't know everything and that I can bring in more people, because in the nonprofit world, more is more. So collaborative in the sense that I'd like to learn from you. I'd like to learn from anyone else who walks in the door. And I'd like to share what we're doing as well, so everybody feels like they have a say.
I think that is the perfect kind of leadership, though, in this kind of ecosystem that you're in, because it's really about, I think, enrolling people into the cause as well.
Absolutely.
And giving them voices, I suppose,
Absolutely.
in pushing for advocacies and whatnot. So, but of course, I know that this kind of leadership has taken an evolution in you. So let's go back maybe into you sharing your journey and what inspired you actually to move from New York to Manila.
Right.
What brought you here?
That's such a good question. I've been here now 18 years, going on 19. I moved with my husband and 3 kids, then 3 kids. Now we have 4. Jelly joined our family. Gia was 7, Miguel was 4, Diego was 1. And we knew, Nino and I, our love story began here in Manila. So I knew that eventually we'd end up back in Manila at some point during our story. Taking the plunge and kind of like selling everything in New York and coming to make a life here in the Philippines was, it was big. I am Filipina American. I'm Filipina and American Italian.
Yes.
Right. So I really identified as Filipina and felt that I was very Filipina until I moved here. And then I realized I'm very American in a lot of things. But I, as any third culture kid, I straddle both cultures. And I appreciate the nuances of both. And of course, know where I need to work on some things and kind of lean on one culture more than the other. So.
Well, that's a story. Well, we're glad that you're here, of course.
Me too.
In Manila, for sure, because I know that you've really brought an impact, I suppose, in the realm that you're working on right now. But of course, I want to find out, the roles that you sort of kind of play. And of course, I would love to know how it is for you in terms of your experience as a hands-on mom and a blogger. I mean, shaped you into becoming the kind of leader that you are.
Right. That's such a good question, and it had me thinking. I really had to think about how to formulate my answer for this. I am a teacher by way of education, so I'm used to teaching and sharing and working with kids of all abilities. But in terms of my mothering, and I think this is as I've gotten older, we kind of were joking around about this earlier. I think, as I've gotten older, I realized that things aren't necessarily, they don't always have to be what they seem. And if my eldest now is coming on 26, and Jelly, who was born with the extra chromosome and has Down syndrome, right? She's going on 13. So she's 13 going on 33. She's super sassy. And the way I parent her is very different than the way I parented my 3 older kids. I give her much more autonomy than I did the 3 big kids. And I think that was just by way of learning and knowing also that as an individual with Down syndrome, she often isn't given a voice. She'll grow up in a world where she won't always be included. She won't always have she doesn't have the same educational opportunities that my 3 big kids had. She probably won't have the same employment opportunities that they will have as well. So a lot of how I parent Jelly has shifted, and evolve is the perfect word, because if I was very authoritative with my 3 big kids, which is kind of how how I grew up as a child in an Italian and a Filipino household. But, it's shifted to a point where I want everybody, the kids definitely have more of a voice now. They definitely have more of a say. I wouldn't say it's, I want to say I'm much more democratic as a parent. And I think when the kids get older, you have to be, because you kind of have to listen a little bit more and read the room with them and see, sometimes kids aren't always upfront with everything, and you have to be able to listen and be able to see that. So Jelly, much like the way I guess I lead and kind of move around in the nonprofit sector, Jelly needs to have a seat at the table. She needs to have a voice, and she needs people to listen to her, right? So if I look at how we run Best Buddies or how we invite individuals to join us, it's much the same way. It's like, come sit with us, see what we do.
I like that. I mean, evolution is the term, I suppose, as we've been using, because I think nobody's born a parent, for sure.
No, for sure. We learn along the way.
But I think it really trickled down into what is necessary, I suppose, in the new space that you're working. Well, it's not so new anymore, because it's been there for since 2014.
Yeah.
And I love it that you really unfolded the kind of leadership that you have inside, and that is also necessary to be unleashed, I suppose, to make it work for you also and thrive in this kind of, kind of business. An entrepreneur. We're all entrepreneurs here.
Correct.
For those who are listening or probably viewing us right now, probably you're thinking of creating a CSR for your companies, or you want to be guided also in this realm. I hope you're getting a little something out of a lot, for sure, out of this lady. Every time that I get to see Michelle and talk to her, I learn something new. So thank you for giving us also an opportunity to spread more awareness and inspire more people. So let's get into more of the mindset, I suppose. What are the principles that guide you in terms of your leadership approach?
I think leaders have to listen, right? So if we're talking about giving someone a voice at the table, you actually have to actively listen to what's being said and be able to read those social cues, right? And read those cues that might not always being said. And when I talked about the third culture, being able to read, Americans are very upfront, in your face, this is what I need. And Filipinos are kind of like, let's say it with a little bit more finesse and let's kind of beat around. You have to be able to listen and see and maybe use all the senses, I guess, and seeing what's really happening with your team, with your volunteers, with your parents and stakeholders, even kind of seeing where we have to, maybe knock on the next door. If parents are seeing things that maybe aren't working or are working or do serve the community well. So it's about listening actively. It's about adjusting. And maybe if in this world, obviously, accommodating and kind of like shifting, constantly assessing and seeing where we can go next that will not just amplify the message, but create the greatest impact.
Right. I mean, very progressive, I suppose. That's what we need. And I think that is what most of the companies right now are advocating, being agile. And I think it really starts with listening, knowing the pain points so that you could address them as you go along, right? So let's go this time into, of course, you are wearing many hats. I want to get to know how you navigate through things. I mean, how do you balance your role of being a mom and, of course, a blogger also, a host of your show, which I have guested in and I enjoy so much because we're very well fed. And, of course, Best Buddies Philippines. How's that balancing act for you?
Well, then you even factor in other hats, being someone's wife, being Nino's wife, or being someone's daughter, aging parents. I'm definitely very much in the sandwich years. I have senior citizen parents that I kind of look after as well, and children that I'm still raising. I think at any given point, I may feel like I'm doing really good wearing one of those hats. And then sometimes I may feel like I totally suck at all of them, right?
Off days.
There's such a thing. I mean, if we're going to be honest about it, not every day is a great day, but some days can be amazing in, you have wins in the organization or you have wins with your parenting. Like you really feel like you connected with your kids and they feel heard and seen. Or wins with, your relationship that you got to work on every day. I think it's not necessarily a balance, but more of, what can I do today to kind of do the best at, be the best at this one particular job that I might have. And I know that's the same for so many other leaders, right? Or so many other individuals who might be wearing different hats. You have so many different responsibilities, especially in this day and age. Like sometimes we're working on 3 or 4 different careers doing different things. I know you do the same. You balance a lot of things too.
Same. I think maybe there are different kinds of ways on how you could attack this, especially if you are multifaceted, as we probably could mention for the both of us. Myself, what I do usually is to list down things that I'll be doing on a certain day, and then maybe categorize which ones are more important.
Higher priority.
Priority. I think you should use that, the 4 quadrants of things that you have to work on. So, but of course, it's not the same thing every day. Sometimes you don't even have the time to plan.
Right.
Because when you open your phone, when you open your eyes and then open your phone, check it all out, there are a lot of concerns already.
Correct.
But then, I think it's always going back to your why, I suppose, and what really demands the greatest attention, at least for the day.
Yeah.
Right? But then
I would agree.
Yeah.
Definitely. But the why and the passion behind it, I think if I'm going to look at anything that's purposeful, will require great attention. And if you're that passionate about it, I think that's where, the endless energy that can come sometimes from all the different things. Like it's really inspiring to work in a community where you have other volunteers and other stakeholders who give so much of themselves. It actually inspires you to give more of yourself as well.
Let's factor that in, I suppose, in you getting to navigate all the hullabaloos and all the noises right outside, that I think most of the successful leaders are able to identify that there are people, there's a community behind them. Sometimes we tend to really micromanage things, whereas there are a lot of people who are also able, that you're surrounded with, and you could delegate the job to, and they could still give you the best output possible, as long as you empower them and inspire them that, hey, you can do this, which I think is what you do, because you're very collaborative, right?
Yes, I was going to actually say that's where the collaboration comes in. And when you give someone the opportunity to step up, it's kind of like they own it too. They're not just recipients or participants. They're stakeholders. They, they got skin in the game.
Yeah.
And when you have skin in the game, the purpose is there, and it's that much easier to, I guess, achieve any of the goals or milestones you set for the organization, because everybody's kind of working towards the same goal.
But of course, it's not all the time that it's rainbows and butterflies, I suppose. So let's talk about a couple of the challenges you get to face, and how do you overcome these challenges in terms of your leadership?
Well, I think, Jasper, it's really, there are barriers. There are always opportunities to learn even from those challenges, right? But when you're talking about inclusion, there's real barriers to inclusion. That's why we're here, because if there weren't any barriers, you wouldn't need best buddies to kind of break them down. I think the biggest barrier when we're talking about challenges, for people to understand why it's important to be inclusive in your everyday decisions, in educational opportunities, in social opportunities, or even in employment, the biggest barrier is attitude and culture.
Right.
A lot of our culture is handed down to us. So that's where I was talking about, like, kind of evolve as you get older and you see things and you learn things differently from people that you surround yourself with. But the biggest barrier to people feeling included is someone not understanding that different is okay, or that different is not less. Because individuals with disabilities, they're absolutely like you and I. They want to feel purposeful in their work. They want to have friends. They want to hang out. They want to, find love. Right? So the biggest barrier to that is the culture and understanding of disability. How do we view disability? How can I shift that perspective so that people understand, my daughter can sing, or can dance, or can, be successful at anything she chooses to do. It just might take her a little while to get there, but she can do it. So it's culture. Culture is the biggest barrier and the biggest challenge. And how do I address it? I invite everyone to join us. Come hang out with us. Come sit with us. Show and tell. A lot of times it's really just about giving people the understanding that individuals with intellectual and developmental diversities can be included. And I do this in bite-sized pieces. Come to our dance night. Come, hang out and join us at Hard Rock Cafe for a concert where you're going to see people with autism playing instruments and singing.
Pique their interest.
Pique their interest.
Give them a bite.
Yes, absolutely. Pull them in, but show them the heart behind everything that we're doing.
Yeah. It's not really just for show, for sure.
No, it's not.
But then it's really about, I think, increasing the level of awareness for people, because sometimes we are glued to our ways, we're glued to how we're thinking, and these opportunities they provide them allows them to have a wider vision, a better scope into understanding, and later on, of course, being touched. And I think that's the most powerful part about having that kind of movement from within. It pretty much feels organic, but you just give them a little stimulation, I suppose. Give them the opportunity to embrace it, well, at least to be more aware of it before they get to embrace it, right? So let's go to the flip side of things. We talked about the challenges. Let's go naman to your proudest moment, I suppose, of being there at the forefront of Best Buddies and probably changing lives.
Right. So many victories and moments that I can celebrate. I think the greatest moment that I celebrate, maybe celebrated and also kind of like, pulled me in.
Brought you to tears, I suppose.
It did bring me to tears, which is why I was looking for tissues earlier. It may bring me to tears again. I am a parent, and I know that as a parent, I have my own flaws, and that I see my children in certain ways. And maybe I might even put them in boxes. The same way someone might have put me in a box because I'm a girl, right? Or because you're a boy, or just these things. And this one parent had actually asked her son, who had been participating in our events for quite a time, and I said, I think he'd be great to do the leadership training. He can, he has a voice, he speaks for himself, he speaks his mind. Could he be one of our ambassadors? Can he join the leadership training? And she's like, oh no, he won't be able to do that. And I was kind of shocked first that she said no. And I said, I think he would be really good at it. Let's try. Because of his condition, I knew he could speak very well. He expressed his thoughts very well. He just couldn't write or hold a pencil very well. I mean, he would take him some time, but if someone helped him and he could dictate, he would be able to do it. So he joined this leadership training. We had 5 or 6 sessions. It was during the pandemic. It was online. He joined every session. He participated. He was excited. He shared his story. He shared his mission in life and how he wants everybody to be included. And after it was all done, and he shared his speech that he wrote himself, and the mom asked me for a call. Could we chat? And I was like, oh no, maybe she didn't like it. Or, whenever a parent says, can I ask for a meeting? It's always like, uh-oh, what's up? And she said, I want to thank you, she said, because I thought my son couldn't do it. And you showed me that he could. And in a way, she was convicted a little bit because she thought he wasn't capable of doing what I was asking him to do. And, for me, that's like the greatest victory. If someone could show that to me, even for my own children, sometimes, when they surprise me, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I doubted you. But take that, and then take it to the next level, which this is with a parent, and now show a business owner that one of my buddies can do a job and be included and do a job really well. And then you now have shifted that owner's perspective and given an opportunity for someone to uplift themselves out of a situation that, people with disabilities are more likely to live in poverty. And if they can work and be given a chance, they're breaking that cycle.
Right. I think disabilities just go beyond physical disability as well as because I think even for somebody without actual disabilities, but sometimes their handicap is their way of thinking for themselves. If we could just break barriers also and just believe in other people, I think it's going to be a great world. You're going to turn out better, I suppose.
What
and
a mindset.
it took you to believe in somebody and change the mindset of not only the mom, but for sure the life also of that guy, diba? Stepping into the light and making sure that, hey, I can do it. I think if somebody believed in me somewhere in my life during that time as well, hey, you can do it. I mean, I could be more powerful. But then there are a lot of people who believed, and I think that's what it takes for sure in this world. That there's a lot of cancellation. I suppose there's a lot of things going on. You become jaded at a very early age, especially with social media, I suppose, because you get to see a lot of standards being posted at you. Right? So it's nice and it's refreshing, to be in a space where there's at least someone who tells you that you are good enough, that you can do it. And that's what you did for that guy and for the parents.
You are worthy. We actually have an employer who employs individuals with autism. Her restaurant, Cucina di Francesco, was built around employing individuals with autism. So from the very building of the restaurant from the ground up to the menu to how they do business, it always had this facet of serving the community this way. And I don't know if you've seen companies who employ individuals with disabilities, they usually have this like the big PWD pin. I have issues with it, right?
I get you.
Because, we're all the same. Why do you have to give them this big pin? Which is why I have the Best Buddies pins. You see a Best Buddies pin.
Cooler.
It's cooler. And, well, her pins are PWD. It says PWD, but the PWD stands for proud, worthy,
there you go.
and driven. Because our buddies are.
Touche. I mean, that's smart, I suppose, also in terms of educating the people around. They somehow, of course, there are people who are going into it without so much knowledge and awareness. That way, they're educated also that there are some sensitivities here, but at the same time, you get to educate them that, hey, they can.
Yes.
They can do this.
Yeah.
So it's
they're worthy.
It's a good play of words.
Yeah, I love it. When I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's perfect.
Ganda. I like that. And probably you guys listening and viewing in right now are learning a little something that you could also put into practice in your own companies. Let's talk about, since we're already talking about it, the sense of community. How do you foster that sense of community and inclusion, of course, within Best Buddies Philippines?
So that's a great question. Again, fostering a sense of community, I think a lot of times is modeled, right? Even as a parent, again, harking back on those different hats that we wear. The golden rule, I think, is everything. Treat people how you want to be treated. And in terms of modeling that behavior, it's really, welcoming everyone without judgment. It sounds simple, but I am simplifying it because it is more. I oftentimes will say everything you need to learn, you learned in kindergarten, and the reason why is because you learned how to be kind, how to ask before taking something. Can you share this with me? Would you like me to share mine with you? Can I sit with you? Do you want to play? Like these simple principles of kindness, right? Even my t-shirt and how to be kind. If the world was a kinder place, what a wonderful world that would be. So simplifying it, but how do you do that in corporate? Making sure that your Zoom meetings can have transcriptions or recording. How do you do that in a school setting? Providing a safe space, making sure people are aware of language, not using the R word, not using words that are hurtful. Being mindful of your language. So modeling that in the community that we serve, but then opening and creating awareness outside of that so that everybody knows they can come and they can join us so that it is a safe space.
I like it. I mean, how you put it, that we could actually learn it from kindergarten.
Yeah.
We just lose it along the way.
We do.
We become jaded with all the experiences that we had. But it's nice to get into that childlike feeling, I suppose. I mean, you don't have to be an actual child to be able to, we just have to revisit the things that we have learned back then, or you might have lost along the way. It's even biblical, diba?
Yeah.
I mean, the Lord mentioned, learn from me, learn from a child, actually. So there was like a parable there, right? So which is still perfect. It's very applicable, especially in this day and age, I suppose. We'll lose that sense of a child in us that we should always keep, I suppose, especially in these scenarios for sure. Okay, let's get into a little technical, but then let's go to the strategies that you put in terms of advocating for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
So strategies, obviously, within the communities and the schools, right? So our friendship chapters, our programs include one-to-one friendship, leadership, which I mentioned earlier, and employment. We also have support for parents. So the strategies in expanding or scaling those programs, it's really also about, again, addition. More is more. If I'm piggybacking on the education system, I don't have to be accredited by DepEd, but a lot of times we pair these schools, private and public schools, a general education school that does not have kids with disabilities with a SPED center. We bring them together. The strategy that I have, I often call myself, is I'm a farmer. And I am planting seeds of inclusion. I do this as young as elementary school. And then we follow the kids all the way up through middle school, high school, university. Because when those kids go out and graduate and they become HR professionals or they become entrepreneurs and they own their own businesses, they would have known and experienced what it's like to feel included and they would have known and experienced what it's like to be friends with someone with a disability. And their perspective, their view is much wider in understanding. So serving up inclusion in bite-sized pieces that are palatable, that are fun, that are easy, that tug on the heartstrings, as well as planting those seeds of inclusion in the kids, because we can sing like Whitney. I believe the children are the future. It's the youth.
That's right.
We're with the youth.
That's right. I love it. I love the analogy also.
Yeah.
Because when you plant, then you grow something. There's got to be something coming out of it. So keep on planting.
Yes, I'm ready. I can.
Okay, some key lessons we want to find out that you've learned throughout your career that have shaped you as a leader personally.
Well, I think mindset is everything, right? I can beat myself up if I made a mistake, but why would I do that? I learned. Even if you make a mistake, it's that's a learning experience, you know. You'll never know until you try,
Right.
right? And if you don't try, who's losing out?
That's right.
The participants would be losing out if I don't try, if I don't ask, if I don't put myself out there. And that, I guess the biggest lesson is if I show someone what it's like to be inclusive, I'm giving them that option or that choice to choose to include. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, they're going to choose to include.
Amazing.
Because we all want to feel good about ourselves and feel good about including others. And while in the beginning, maybe it might be self-driven, the greater good definitely is important to any leader or to any member of the community or someone who's part of something. When you feel like you're part of something, I think it's easier to make that choice.
Yeah, I think it's at the end of the day, when you say, for example, you have your own moment at home, you get to think, what am I doing this for?
Right.
If you're just, you know, you're not an island
Right.
for sure, and you know there are a lot of people around you. So I think you find sense in having that legacy, I suppose, and that legacy won't last without people. You're gonna be leaving it behind,
Absolutely.
right? So I think, you know, that's very human, I suppose. But you just have to activate it because sometimes we lose our humanity along the way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, but of course we don't stop learning. So how do you continue your growth and develop your leadership skills along the way?
So this is something I've learning, growing, you know, investing in myself, because it is investing. Finding mentors or finding leaders, even doesn't necessarily have to be within the nonprofit community or the nonprofit sphere. I think, you know, looking at anyone who's successful or really good at what they do, learning from these individuals. And that doesn't necessarily, when I say mentor, I think a lot of people think mentor could be someone who's older and wiser. A lot of times it is, but you can learn from anyone, really.
Right.
So being open to those experiences, again, it's that mindset, consistently putting yourself out there, always looking for the learning opportunities. I just went back to school last year, right, to learn how to better manage a nonprofit. And you know, the people in the room, the nonprofit professionals that I was surrounded with, I learned tons from, but then I also learned that I knew a lot too.
Right.
And that was good. That was like reinforcing.
Yeah.
Like I do know a few things. I do know how to collaborate. I do know how to bring people to this mission. So I guess always being willing to learn that mindset, and then finding people who you can learn from too, inside and outside of the organization.
I think it's an interplay of the hunger and another H, humility.
Yes.
That you don't know it all, but you know a lot for sure. But there are people who know a lot as well. But when you put that together, it becomes a better version of you because you're open to other people's ideas and your own. So,
Absolutely.
amazing.
Got to come at it with humility.
Yeah. I love that. Now, for all the aspiring leaders that we have right here as our audience right now, maybe what they're looking for is how to strike a balance. I mean, you've mentioned about the balancing act already, but then maybe just to hammer it even further, of your personal and of course your professional responsibilities. Maybe let's throw into that your responsibility just in case you also want to volunteer, diba? It's not just
Right.
your career, not just your personal life, but the lives of others because you are into this cause.
Right.
Like Best Buddies, if you want to volunteer sometime soon.
Absolutely. So, sorry, the question again?
The balance. For the other leaders.
For the other
Yeah.
leaders, this is for the leaders. Okay, so if you are finding your way and you're, in this position that you feel people are looking up to you or to lead this cause
Right.
or to lead a company or even a group of people, I mean, it could be small or large. I think the advice that I would have would to always remain grounded in the purpose of it, right? So harking back on that, because passion can only go so far if you don't find the purpose in what you're doing, which is where that energy can come from. Balancing it, I think, is also, we're going to talk about self-care, right? We just survived a pandemic where everybody was, concerned with mental health and well-being and all of these things. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
So it's also about finding, grounding yourself in the purpose, finding time for yourself as well, celebrating those wins, those little wins, even if it's with a good cry. I feel like prayer is important too.
Yeah.
You brought up scripture earlier. Being open, again, I feel like it's just kind of summing up everything we already talked about to, if you were going to find yourself in a leadership position to, maybe even pulling back and saying, what does it feel like when someone leads you? And right?
Yeah.
And how do you want to be led? I guess kind of even looking within.
True. A lot of empathy there, I suppose.
Has to be, I think. I guess that's my leadership style as well. I guess that's why I'm collaborative. Very empathetic. Understanding I'm very feelings based in much of what I do. And there are good and bad things to that. There are good and bad things to that. But I think if it's the advice for the leaders, it's really to kind of consistently ground yourself in the purpose of it. And if you haven't found that purpose yet, maybe dig a little deeper, take some time to figure out what that is.
That's what life is, right?
Yeah.
Finding your purpose.
Yeah.
Kudos to those who found their purpose already. But then for those who are still looking for it, go dig deeper, as you mentioned.
You can. Find your purpose and then give it away.
Okay, we found the purpose, I think, in Best Buddies. So I think let's look into the future now. So what are the long-term goals that you have for Best Buddies in the Philippines, and how do you plan to achieve them?
Yeah. I think any good leader also thinks about succession and legacy. And, I love doing the work that I'm doing. And while I can imagine myself doing it forever, I want to pass it on to someone who is just as passionate and purposeful and maybe has the same vision for individuals with intellectual and developmental diversities. So my goals, I think, in the next 5 years, obviously, would be to be able to continue to expand and impact greater numbers of individuals with and without disabilities. Beyond that, 10 years, I want to be able to step away and kind of see it blossom. It's blossomed so much in the past 10 years. I can't even believe it's 10 years. Like when you think about it, holy smokes, it's 10 years already.
Time flies.
Jelly's 13. I think, the mission and vision of Best Buddies International is to empower individuals and then change the way society looks at individuals with disabilities to a point where there's no need for an organization like Best Buddies, right? How lofty, how big to think. I want to think big like that, that if society here sees the value of individuals with intellectual and developmental diversities, and then the opportunities and the doors are flung wide open for them, then you don't need an organization like Best Buddies advocating for them. But I think we still have a long ways to go before we do that. We need more volunteers, more schools, more faculty advisors, more companies buying in and saying, okay, we believe that they can. So that's what we'll work towards.
I love it. But I love the goal. Because when there's no more Best Buddies, that means...
everyone's included.
Right. Amazing. That's a goal. But in the meantime, the goal this time is to take a little break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be back after these reminders. Hi, this is Jasper with the leadership tip. Lead with purpose and authenticity. Great advocacy-driven leaders don't just support a cause, they embody it. To be an effective advocate, align your leadership style with your core values and communicate your message with passion and clarity. Inspire action by sharing personal stories, staying informed, and engaging with your community. People follow leaders who are authentic, informed, and committed to making a difference. Back to the episode.
The Built Different podcast would like to thank Henry's Cameras, Power Mac, Hollyland, U Green Philippines, Kappa Cabina, Surge Digital Media, Madcap Productions, Days Media Group, Jazz Up Communications.
Welcome back to Built Different, and with us still is Michelle Aventajado. This time, we're going to be playing our game. We usually do this, but we try to tailor fit it to our guests.
Okay.
It's called Different, Different, Same, Same, but in this moment, it's about leadership story boxes. So I don't know if you could see it from here, you folks. There are different images right in front of you. Now, Michelle will be picking four from amongst these things.
Okay.
And create a story of leadership. Could be a story, could be a quotation, like a takeaway coming from this episode. So we're doing that because this is active learning.
It is.
So we do activities. All right, so which one? Pick four. Which four? And
Wow,
I want to make a story out of it.
I want to choose the four on this top left corner.
So we have a torch, we have a handshake, we have a heart, and a couple of books. If you're gonna stitch it together into a story that could probably be a way or a vehicle to tell them maybe your leadership style or maybe the future that you're looking at for Best Buddies or anything in general, make up your story.
Make it up along the way.
Yes.
All right, I love this. This is challenging.
So let's zero in into the four.
So we'll take the four.
Four right here.
Okay.
There you go.
So if I'm going to sum up what we do with Best Buddies, that also kind of ties into the leadership, right? And my type of leadership is I take what people may have learned from books or movies or stereotypes or what they've learned outside. And I share part of my heart and even parts of our buddies and what we love about them. Then we can light a fire, right? So this is taking what you might have already learned, sharing it in a way or shifting that perspective so you can see the heart in everything that we do and the heart of the buddies, because their heart is the same like you and me. They have the same.
With the hearts too.
Yeah, we do. Right? So this is, you connect through the heart, through music, through laughter, through everything that friends like to do, because that's why we're best buddies. Then you can light the fire, where you're lighting that fire and passing the torch to others, right? So you're passing the torch of friendship, of acceptance, of safe spaces that opens up doors for collaboration and coming together for the greater good. So through all of those things, you obviously have what it's like or what it feels like to be involved in Best Buddies.
I like it.
Right?
And we lived happily ever after. What a beautiful story for sure. It's been a beautiful episode for sure as well. Of course, a lot of stories right there, which we hope you guys could pull something from and apply into your own lives and to you being a leader as well. So thank you so much, Michelle, for
Thanks
joining
for
us.
having me.
Your last words, and probably invite them also to be a part of the cause of the
Yes.
movement.
For sure.
And evolve too.
For sure. So I'll share a little bit. You can follow us on social media, Best Buddies Philippines, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. You could also follow us on Instagram at bestbuddies_PH. Check out our website. We have everything there, www.bestbuddiesph.org. There's opportunities to sign up and volunteer, opportunities if you want to learn how to employ or how to partner for employment. And we have really big coming up, the Friendship Walk, which is happening at the end of the month, and also a golf tournament. So you guys can find all that information on the website.
See, all the fun activities rolling. So we gotta see you soon, guys, with Best Buddies, because you've got a friend in them. And me too.
Absolutely.
Be a part of it. And just to wrap things up, ladies and gentlemen, we are all built different. And that is meant to be accepted, loved, and celebrated. We invite you to join us for the next episode. My name is Jasper Thompson. This has been Built Different. Bye.
Thank you.
The Built Different podcast would like to thank Henry's Cameras, Power Mac, Hollyland, U Green Philippines, Kappa Cabina, Surge Digital Media, Madcap Productions, Days Media Group, Jazz Up Communications,